Setting the stage. I want you to think back to when you were a kid for a moment, especially if you were born in the mid or early 90s. You wake up, take a bath, go to school, come home, do homework, play your Nintendo 64 GameCube, and now it's nighttime. You're in bed by 7 or 8, laying in your race car bed with the nightlight on. You have the remote to your CRT TV and you flip through one of the 3 channels you have any interest in. Disney on 55, Nickelodeon on 57, Cartoon Network on 53. In the back of your mind, you remember your parents telling you not to watch Cartoon Network past 8. You know you want to trust them and listen, but curiosity always kills the cat, so you decide to stay up late. Sneak it and watch Adult Swim, lowering the volume enough to where, if your parents came to the door, they wouldn't hear the cursing, violence, and everything else they try to protect you from, as if it was really on there anyway. You see the pool startup bumper filled with old people and a lifeguard saying all kids out, and then your heart begins to beat fast. Oh, you're in for it now if your parents knock on that door. But what was now in your vision was your version of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And your parents constantly told you that Adult Swim was the equivalent of that apple, that Turkish delight, that now undulated in your view. You couldn't wait to experience it. You spent so much time thinking of what awful things could be on this channel, and now it was the time. And you bet the entire house on this life-changing experience. If your parents call you, say goodbye to this CRT for at least a few weeks. And then
Small.
you're immediately flabbergasted that you spent many hours watching cartoons. Well, just for another cartoon that, in a way, looked worse than what you were watching. Surely this was what was on Adult Swim. There might be another, like 1 or 2 hells an episode, but that's no different than a night at the dinner table with family over. Where was the sailor mouths, the blood, guts, and viscera? Where was anything of value in this? Where was all the sexual content I wasn't supposed to know existed until I turned 30? Why is this soccer coach talking to these kids my age? I mean, this isn't how my teachers or coaches talk to me, but what's special about this? This was the biggest letdown I'd ever seen, and I risked the next month of TV and video games over it. And this was the cartoon equivalent of Ralphie in the bathroom finishing the puzzle that told him to just be sure to drink your Ovaltine. I'd never been so disappointed, so I turned it off and went to bed. Mission was a success and a failure. Of course, in real life it didn't go that way. More like I woke up early, searched around and found it on, and didn't understand it. But that's how it felt watching home movies as a kid. It didn't make sense. And it's not supposed to. And not for regular reasons either, like you don't get South Park jokes. This was different. You know, I firmly believe this is my generation's version of Earthbound. I'll get more into that later, but for now let's talk about home movies. Home Movies, the show. Home Movies was a show comprised of 52 episodes over 4 seasons from 1999 to 2004. Most of the show was made while airing on Adult Swim. The show had a group of kids and adults basically just going through life. It's not a kids show, but I know many of us had seen it at some point or another, especially when we were younger. If you were born in the mid-90s, you might have snuck it at night like I did. You have the characters Brendan Small, Jason, and Melissa as the main trio for the show, and in addition you have the adults Coach McGurk and Brendan's mom Paula. The show also has a good cast of side characters like Mr. Lynch, Shannon, Walter and Perry. Brendan, Jason, and Melissa like to make movies. This is probably due to the recent divorce at the start of the show, and we're told that the camera was given to Brendan by his now estranged father. I'll go more into my personal experiences later, but in my 2022 reunion with home movies, in retrospect, this exact thing happened with my parents, except instead of my camera, it was an N64 my mom had not wanted my dad to buy me, but he did anyway, and I appreciate that, but more on that later. Typically, the show is about Brendan loving his hobby of making movies, and everything else in his life kind of takes a backseat. He doesn't do well in school, but the show is commenting on things a lot deeper than just passions and hobbies as a child. The crux of most episodes, it's about showing that adults and kids have the same problems, but in different contexts, and it shows a similar sort of powerlessness between the kids and adults to change the issues in the status quo. In one episode, Brendan wants to buy a fisheye lens for his camera, but he's a broke kid and there's not much money at home, and on top of that, his attempts to make money fail. In another episode in that same vein, Coach McGurk wants a DVD player, and he uses his insomnia to make money being tested at the local medical school, but it never works out by the end. This is just one example, but there's so many. But I don't want to overblow the main point of this video, so if you haven't seen the show before, just understand it's about kids and adults having the same issues, and how both adults and kids try to figure out how to fix the problems, and generally don't always end well in handling things in their own respects and methods. On top of that basis for the show, quite a bit is ad-lib. The dialogue is so unique, and the only thing I can easily compare it to is Dr. Katz or the Small Talk in a Smiling Friends episode, but just imagine that Small Talk in a Smiling Friends episode is the entire show. Home Movies has many important things to say about being an adult and being a kid, but when you're still a kid, you won't understand any of it. This is why I was so disappointed. There was this expectation of an Adult Swim show as something gritty and raw, but when I watched it, it went way over my head because I wasn't old or mature enough to understand witty dialogue compared to everything else on TV. I couldn't look past how the show looked to fully enjoy anything, so anytime I'd sneak Adult Swim as a kid, and after, when I could watch Adult Swim, I just wouldn't watch the show. So we have a show whose main ideas and aspects which made it special I hated when at first those aspects is what got the show canceled until Adult Swim picked it up. Or in other words, the show found a new home with people who could appreciate it with the proper audience. Earthbound. Not necessarily a kid's game. Now hear me out. What does Earthbound have to do with home movies? I promise it will make sense. It has everything to do with the thesis statements and ideas in this video. Earthbound was a game on the Super Nintendo about a group of kids with psychic powers, starring Ness, which most people know from Smash Bros. They are sent off on a long quest to destroy the evil Gygus, which, if you remember, is this undulating monstrosity that looked like if Zalgo took over your TV screen. The game has a very unique art, aesthetic, and style that also flows into the music. It's hypnotizing, like some kind of Syriac loop. The charm on this game is consistently captivating, and once the game's battle system clicks in, it's hard to put down. The graphics looked bright, and the sprite work was pretty immaculate. For a Super Nintendo game, some of the visuals looked as if they're pushing the system to a certain optimized limit, even though that isn't necessarily true. It could have fooled me personally. It's in the same notion that RE1 remake on GameCube to this day still looks peak in its own way. Music in the game is another notable aspect. Even if some of it's made from copyrighted material, the composers have an almost whimsical tone to the score, and some of the songs you may have also heard in Smash Bros. I first heard of the game at a very young age, maybe 6 or 7. I was over one of my best friend's house and we were playing the original Smash Bros. For N64. He had every character unlocked besides one, and that character was Ness, which later that night I learned after looking it up back on GameFAQs. Ness was difficult to unlock, especially since we were in like first grade maybe. I thought the title Mother was a weird game too, but I couldn't really surf the web on my own yet, so all the background info I wouldn't learn for quite some time. It would come around again when Melee came out, and seeing trophies from Mother and other Japan and PAL exclusive games was my only peek into a whole other world the US didn't get. I would eventually get to play Earthbound, when later in life I'd get a Wii and my best friend homebrewed it for me. At the time, I hadn't seen many videos on it besides a Happy Video Game Nerd, now Stop Skeletons from Fighting. He's a personal hero of mine. This could have just passed me by, but I hadn't seen too many people talk about Earthbound in early YouTube. This brings us to one of the reasons why this is in the video at all. The glaring issue: the game notoriously sold poorly, and with a very questionable ad campaign, it failed over here. Despite how loved the game is now and online afterwards, the initial sales were low compared to what they wanted, and it didn't help the increased price tag at the time for the big box game. I'll talk more about sales later on, but the important thing is, even though this was marketed to kids, it's not really a kid's game. I mean, I'd let my child play it. It's not bad due to content, despite a re-rating from KA to T since being placed back on the virtual console shelves. There are some seriously dark undertones to this game. There's Gygas, of course, but there's also the happyisms group that's commenting on Shinrikyo and adjacent Japanese cult groups. You have the transhumanistic bodies the main characters go into near the end of the game, commenting on the tech explosion at the time and how far it will go. And finally, themes of child abuse, commentating on absentee fathers as well as harsh abusive discipline that can be a real issue in Japan. This isn't too different from home movies. When you pick apart the episodes, there's a deeper commentary on adults and kids' lives at times. You can literally pick a random episode and it's most likely trying to speak on how kids and adults handle similar issues with equal powerlessness to change it. I think this is important to pick out because it goes right into what happened to both of these pieces of media we've talked about here. Critical reassessment, a pseudo-butterfly effect. Critical reassessment can be a very important turning point in the lifespan for any given piece of media. Doesn't work now? Maybe it'll turn around in a decade, or send it to another network with an audience that welcomes the project. I think this can happen for quite a few reasons, some being the media didn't work with the assumed audience, the themes commentated weren't popular enough at the time by general audiences, the marketing had flaws of numerous kinds, disrupting standards and practices, possibly causing a legal suit or legal uproar, South Park on that one. Avant-garde structure of the media being presented was kind of too out there for the time period. You could throw Dr. Katz on that as well as home movies. For one reason or another, if a given piece of media doesn't hit off well, sometimes the plug can be pulled way too quickly. And this is what happened with home movies. After 5 episodes, it was pulled from UPN. After it was picked up by Adult Swim, by the summer of the next year, it became the highest rated comedy show on the network. Brendan Small and the team really found their home for home movies, and it was successful with that correct audience. I know UPN wasn't a frequented channel, but I doubt the show could have existed and done well on a few, if anything else, but Adult Swim. It probably lacked the offensive material enough to be picked up by Comedy Central or MTV, and it doesn't have the general look and appeal for a primetime show like The Simpsons. But that's what made the show special. It wasn't like anything else on TV before. Excluding Dr. Katz, there will never be another Coach McGurk character, which in my opinion is the greatest animated character ever created. Shows and media that are ahead of their time don't typically do well. Just look at Shawshank Redemption. Only 16 million on the box office, and now you can find it on every other day on AMC, and it's considered one of the greatest movies of all time. Although that's obviously rare for that level of acclaim to come to an initially failed project. When it happens to any extent, it's an exciting chance for what could be a re-emergence of someone's life work. Now for Earthbound. I won't go into too much here, as other content creators have gone through it much deeper. But at the time, Japanese game developers' view of RPGs over in America had been quite different, and they felt adding a guide in to help new American RPG and JRPG players was a good option. However, this made the game come with a higher price tag, offsetting parents and others who didn't want to shelve an extra $20 to $30 for a single game. I wasn't living at the time, obviously, but given how it sold around 140,000 units, people didn't notice it or care most of the time. Regardless of the factors that resulted in the failure of the game over here, the game has been critically reassessed as one of the best games on the system, if not the best. It's a little different for video games, as games that do poorly don't always get a second chance and are left in obscurity until greedy resellers buy 30 copies and put a gun to your wad if you want to play it on original hardware, but we don't have to talk about that. If it wasn't for the cult following of Earthbound, with the many people toiling on starmen.net and other gaming sources consistently sending petitions to Nintendo, I doubt it would ever have gotten another day in the sun for purchase. To conclude this section, critical reassessment can be a great thing for projects long lost or forgotten, and media ahead of its time for other reasons. I feel like there is a clear through line between Earthbound and home movies where the critical reassessment comes in, because all it takes is a group or sometimes just one person to get the ball rolling again, a pioneer group to start a pseudo-butterfly effect and say to the effect of, no, this is actually worth your time, look at what the show, game, media is really saying. And that's basically how home movies happened. Khaki Jones single-handedly found the show and picked it up for Adult Swim. Apparently she watched it during the original UPN run and loved it. And all it takes is one person sometimes to get the ball rolling on a remake, a revival, or anything like that. Emplemon. Now I'm going to talk a lot about how the show and the game, but mostly home movies, impacted me personally. This is partially piggybacking off the personal stories in my last video, but if you didn't see that one or you don't remember, I lost my first job I'd been at for 5 years, a few months right before COVID happened, which was an actual positive butterfly effect in my life in retrospect. But more on that in a minute. I didn't do anything for over 2 years, despite me being home for so long. I did start what is considered to be a personal curriculum of sorts to prepare for when I finally go back to school for my PhD and whatever happens after that. But originally, I started doing things again because wasting away at home doing nothing but video games is the worst place for me to sit in. Even if I couldn't get it all together, something was better than nothing. It all started with reading books. Every day I would read a couple chapters. I started off with Harry Potter and just moved on from there, Sanderson, other authors. And I would also make sure to take care of myself and brush my teeth every day and try to take showers every day. Then I added in Japanese. When I hit 24-ish years old, I kind of told myself that it's now or never due to the difficulty and time it takes to be fluent. Chances are I'll never be fluent. Okay, I'm a lot like Chris in Japan, Chris abroad with this one. Like, there were two mountains. I got past kind of the one, but the second one I just cannot do. It's just very difficult. Eventually I added in more things until I'd been spending 5 to 6 hours a day doing things to keep my mind busy. I studied history, picked up writing fantasy books and studied Brandon Sanderson lectures, resumed intensive biblical studies and other daily tasks that I do. But I wasn't happy. I was productive, but everything seemed not as great as I was hoping. I was doing things I always wanted to do, but after a certain point, I realized I was still holding myself back on what I thought was possible for myself. I remember the day so clearly. It was March 12th, 2022. I was playing World of Warcraft in Zereth Mortis, an S tier zone for me personally. Shadowlands got a few things right, somehow, and my favorite creator at the time, Emplemon, or Emperor Lemon, made a video on Mac Tonight. I remember just flying around and being so excited because Mac Tonight was a topic I was hoping he would get to cover, and in the middle of my quarter-life crisis and everything else going on, I got to sit down and just enjoy one of my favorite pieces of media by my current favorite YouTuber. I had some money left over from the stimulus package and I bought the shirt for it too, which I leave it up as a tapestry in my room. There was always this one video I hadn't seen, and I was planning on watching it. It was called Home Movies, The Spirit of Creation. I wanted to see what he had to say about the show that I never really got to that point of as a kid, hence the intro of this video. I watched it and my eyes were open. There was something about that show on a rewatch as an adult that I can't really describe. As a kid thinking back, I felt like Brendan. You know, a kid into fun projects after a divorce. Maybe that was why I went to video games for fun. My dad bought me my N64 as a kid, and later on he gave me all his games for it. And it's like I didn't see my dad anymore, but I still had this aspect of him because he also liked video games. You know, for me, I never wanted to make movies as a kid, not until YouTube became a thing. And the same friend who I found out Earthbound from was the same friend who got me into YouTube all those years ago. But I never had a camera like Brendan did. I also wanted to make manga and learn Japanese or Chinese. I had interest in writing, but I never really did any of those as a kid. Or I got bullied out of most of it, which was pretty typical back then. It was like towards the end of like American Pie, America culture. Both in and out of the show, the history of it, and watching home movies again showed me something rare. That despite all the issues in my life, it's important to follow your passions and not just give up on life when you turn into Job and everything around you is just the worst version it could ever be, and you feel like you're just living in the worst timeline ever, you know, because what you don't want to do, you don't want to just end up in a wage cage somewhere with no way out. You know, even though pipe dreams, which often require high skill, massive time investments, and sometimes can be influenced or completely blocked by luck, unfortunately, you know, it can be really offsetting to try. It's worth it to do it anyway. Every project created out of passion, that inner need in you to see a piece of something tangible through to the end. Don't let that die and fizzle out. because the truth is, it's not a failure, even if it goes nowhere. I have 2.5 books I wrote, and I stopped because I'm learning how to make manga now, because I was capping and limiting myself on what I was capable of as a person. I'm going to shoot for the moon, and soon I want to start learning astronomy and astrophysics and quantum mechanics. You know, I want to see where my end game is, like what is my actual limit as a person. On the language aspect, it's the second mountain in Japanese, but for everything else, like, what is my limit? And that's what home movies taught me. To just do it, even if it's stupid or dumb. The movies or whatever media you make may have a means to an end from a certain angle, but there's something special in those passion projects and videos we make anyway. Now, this is a spoiler to the end of the show, which of course I recommend everyone to watch the show through at least once, but skip to this time for the next section if you don't want to know about the ending of the final episode, Focus Screw. When Brendan monologues that he doesn't want to make movies anymore, and the sunset theme plays into Brendan's camera, where he actually drops the camera and is destroyed and run over by a car, it's one of the few times I felt like I was watching the ending The Perks of Being a Wallflower for the first time again. It's such a depressing ending to the show, especially due to the music. Brendan's camera, the song, kind of just ends. It fizzles out in a way his passions for making movies did. It's like as soon as the song reaches its climax and where the chorus would be, it just ends. And that's really sad. You know, was it life that bogged him down? Or was he finally over the divorce and lack of a proper father figure in his life? Did the acceptance of Brendan's grief process finally come? Anyone for tapas? Home movies, the media we make. It seems like either the process to create, seeing a project to its end, is littered with an almost insurmountable amount of issues and setbacks, or the projects don't hit off well after it's all said and done. You know, sometimes it's both. Sometimes the best thing that can happen is we fail at first, or we have the appearance of failure. Having the public, or maybe even ourselves, not fully understanding the weight of the media we make until a decade later. Because there's parts of you that goes into things that you make that you're not conscious of. It's just a human thing in art. It's actually one of the most interesting aspects of art for me personally. You know, some of the things we make, we look back a decade later and we look at all the things that we've done, and we're finally proud of all the work we accomplished all those years ago that was tailored to us as a failure by everyone around us or ourselves. Those projects and early failures are what builds people a path onto creating something with life-changing potential. Home movies takes the cake for this point. If UPN never took it down, chances are it wouldn't have went to Adult Swim. And Adult Swim is where it could be free to do almost whatever Brendan and his team wanted to do, with the help of Adult Swim and Khaki Jones and etc. You know, which later influenced people like me to make videos like this. This video, my channel, everything I've done since trying my life again has been because of this Emperor Lemon video out of everything on this show that I just did not understand as a kid. These videos are passion projects of mine, of my favorite things and esoteric ideas I have about them. I've always wanted to do this, and now I finally am, after years of failing. But when I look back, I realize that I don't regret writing, or trying to learn a new language, or the myriad of things I did to keep myself busy all these years post-COVID. I do not regret a single thing, whether it worked out or it didn't. And one thing of note is, if people didn't band together and create a community around like something like Earthbound, chances are the game never would have come back to the limelight as a masterpiece, which is exactly where it belongs. If I never got to play that game, and especially watch the YouTube videos surrounding it, especially Stop Skeletons from Fighting, I wouldn't be making this video today. You know, there are many more games, movies, shows, pieces of art, and some things, and of everything under the sun that can be good examples like these two of something that requires critical assessment due to various factors. I picked these two out together because it seems as if home movies, for kids who grew up not watching it, coming around again like I did and enjoying it in the same vein as Earthbound, home movies is my generation's version of Earthbound. It sounds weird, but it kind of fits enough. I hope that makes sense. I'm 29, by the way. Now I want to talk about failure. Failure is something I deal with pretty often. With no writing experience, I decided to write books. I studied a lot. On repeat, I would watch those Sanderson lectures and take heavily detailed notes. I read every single book he had printed, and I took heavy notes on everything to learn how to do stuff. And now I'm not writing books anymore. I'm doing manga because that's what I really want to do, because that's what I want to do. My stories are made for a format of manga better than a book. An example of that is like you watch a Jackie Chan movie, 80% fighting, it's a great time. You go to a book, and if it's 80% fighting in a book, your book is never going to get published, not even close. It's just not how the format works. And that's okay, but the things that make a written book special, I don't care about as much. And in that same vein, I don't regret writing, because now instead of writing books, I'm doing these YouTube videos now, which is what I really wanted to do for quite a long time. And I get to do manga, and it's like I did below average in school. I taught myself an astronomical amount of things, pun intended, I guess. Every failure has helped me along the way. Things that seemed to work out at all ended up working in my favor at some point. Skills I've needed in X have helped me in Y, and it all comes together to where I am today writing this. To leave this on one final note, passion flows when the eyes go dry and you still can't quit. When your exhausted body is begging for sleep at 7:19 a.m. on a Wednesday. You took an all-nighter just to get the script done because your project means so much to you. That need inside of you ignores any and all required toil, money, supplies, etc. We create the media we make because we know we're the only ones who can make them in our specific way with our specific inflection and reflection. So whatever your passion is, just do it. You could have the next Home Movies or Earthbound in you, and you just never know until you follow that. And it may cost a lot, but even if it doesn't work out now, a decade from now, you could have a critical reassessment and you can turn into a Home Movies. Endcard. This was way more Home Movies than Earthbound, but both still had good impacts on me. Home Movies just has the recency bias, honestly. I did enjoy playing Earthbound as a kid, but I didn't really get it because I was in like middle school with a Wii on a homebrew. It's like a lot of that stuff just flies over your head. Most of this was written over one night, and things again blended into each other, which I didn't want to do, which is a mistake because I should have written this when I was conscious, but I'm half conscious even as I say this. I am so tired. I've been up for so many hours, just working on this like nonstop. But I'm happy to be able to make videos. I want to try to get through the editing process pretty quickly, but I'm shooting for a video every 2 weeks or so. It depends on some variables though, because life be crazy and I'm just kind of hanging in there, sort of. I really wanted to name this Home Movies and Earthbound twice in a lifetime. It just has a good ring to it, but by the time I was writing this part, the scope of the video went way too wide, and that's typically what happens, is I have an idea, I write the script, and then it gets broader because I'm pretentious, or for some other reason. My initial, idea was to make a video about how both Earthbound and Home Movies do the same thing, but it was too personal, and it wasn't, the ending thesis statement to this is home media we appreciate changes over time, or it changes with critical reassessment, or there's a butterfly effect somewhere where something really small and then it blows up into this huge thing, unintended sometimes intended. That's why I'll use pseudo-butterfly effect, because that technically, if it's intended, it's not a butterfly effect, but I don't really care because if the shoe mostly fits, it's fine. Yeah, but I'm very surprised by the amount of just comments and interaction on the Genshin Impact liminality video, which is crazy because the only other video I've cracked 1K views before playing Snowfield from Clannad, and that's it. I've never had any kind of anything above 10 views on YouTube was extremely rare for me before I completely scrubbed my channel. And that's the other thing with this is I did everything you're not supposed to do, and I still got a lot of traction on the Genshin video, and I hope this one gets traction too. But if it doesn't, that's okay, because this is more like I'm looking at things to let them go in a way, which we'll get on to more of those things the more videos I make, and the things that I actually need to let go will be very apparent. Because I still watch. I go to sleep at night with home movies on. I love this show, you know. Like if I had the means, I would play Earthbound through all the way. Is it wrong if I haven't beaten the game? Like I know what I've seen so many videos on it, you know. And AVGN's video was literally one of the best videos I've seen from him in like at least a decade. Like at least a decade. Whenever he goes into the nostalgia stuff, that's where it really is. When he talks about the space of nostalgia and what that means, and when he looks back to the old stuff, and he's not, I'm not gonna do